This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is exactly why I go to the gym. This is a desktop replacement gaming laptop with the new NVIDIA RTX 2080 card inside. This is the Asus ROG G703GX. You're probably, if you follow these things, not a stranger to the G703 line. We've seen the G703Gi previously. So this one basically is the refresh with the RTX 2080 card for your ray tracing, your DLSS, and performance improvements. We're going to look at it now. But first, before we discuss the models, some things will be a constant here. Obviously, the chassis itself. The 144 Hz IPS G-Sync 17.3-inch display. It is kind of a shame they don't have a 1440p option, at least a 2K or even a 4K option, because this machine is powerful enough to actually drive games at that resolution. Fortunately, it has plenty of display outputs, so you can do that with an external monitor if you want. You'll get an RTX 2080 NVIDIA GeForce card inside, and beyond that, there are 3 configurations: good, better, and best, or expensive, way expensive, and very, very expensive. And you can see the specs for each of those on screen. So if that $4,000 Core i9 option isn't enough for you and you want even more RAM, for example, or even bigger SSDs, or you want to have a hard drive in there for big, fast, cheap storage, or any of the other configurations, instead of buying it from a retail store like Best Buy, you can buy it from one of the online gaming laptop resellers. CuckUSA.com supplied our review loaner. In fact, they can upgrade the RAM, change the SSD configuration for you, put a hard drive in, all that sort of stuff that you want. Other goodies include a pretty good software control panel application, actually, that Asus provides that lets you do easy overclocking. If you're not into going to BIOS and changing your clock multipliers, you can also overclock the GPU using that. You have Thunderbolt 3 on board. You have a per-key RGB backlit keyboard, and feels nice too. Microsoft Precision trackpad as well. So I get a big desktop replacement gaming laptop instead of just getting a desktop or getting a thin and light. Well, you can't put a desktop in any room you want very easily. You can't take it with you on occasion if you need to do that. So obvious point number one versus a desktop. Compared to a thin and light, we expect to have not only room for more expansion in terms of those drives, the RAM slots, all that sort of thing, but also better cooling, so you can push it harder and get better performance, which is largely the case with this gaming laptop. Now, one thing they did change with the motherboard compared to the previous generation is they have a whole lot of heat pipes, and we'll take a look at the internals later, but they actually had 3 dedicated heat pipes for the CPU now, and now they only have 2 dedicated. It's got some shared ones. So obviously, they're worried more about the RTX cooling versus the CPU, and that probably shouldn't have been the case because the CPU still does get toasty. But the surface temperatures on a desktop replacement laptop like this are not generally ever hot, in part because we have plastic on the bottom. Plastic doesn't get that hot in lots of rooms, so you're not touching anywhere close to the CPU and the GPU in this, but the thermals are pretty well managed. Just like MSI does with Titan Pro, we have 2 very large fans, and they exhaust both out the side and out the rear, so you got maximal air removal. The bottom doesn't have as many vents as MSI does with the Titan Pro. I mean, my God, the whole entire bottom of an MSI Titan Pro is vents. Not so much with this, but there's still enough room for air intake on it. In terms of performance when gaming, which is what you care about, performance is excellent on this. And unless you go to a desktop CPU and a laptop, which is kind of hard to come by, Alienware's Area 51M is going to offer that. Origin PC always offers that. You can usually find a Clevo chassis that has a desktop processor inside. Apart from those, this is as fast as it's going to get. And indeed, the frame rates in games is excellent on this, and particularly if you do set up with that dual channel RAM for sometimes up to 20 frames per second increase in games. The benchmarks on this are also excellent. So how about the cooling on it? Well, like I said, the issue here is I would have liked to see more dedicated heat pipes for that CPU. While the surface temperatures will never get burning hot, like I said, most of the time you could put it on your lap, except your legs would fall asleep because it's so heavy and so big, right? Most of the time surface temperatures are fine on this, but while our GPU temperatures are just fine at 75 centigrade or so typically, which is chill. Typical of NVIDIA cards. The CPU, particularly if we're playing in that default plugged-in turbo mode in the Asus games control panel there, the CPU will hit near thermal maximum, which is a little bit surprising. But Intel's Coffee Lake 6-core CPUs have been hot customers and not that easy to cool. I would recommend maybe repasting it if you really care about those core temperatures and you'd like to see them even lower. I bet it would make a good difference. In terms of noise, if you go with that default turbo setting when you have both of your power supplies plugged in, yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute too. It's pretty loud, you know, even just having it sitting on the desk, every time you launch a program, those fans are going to ramp up. If a Windows update runs, the fans are going to ramp up. And, it is not as quiet as I would have expected. Now, I would just say take that control panel and set it back down to the balance mode because you're still getting a whole lot of performance there with less of that noise. These are loud fans that move a lot of air and they sound like that. You know the little desk fan that you put on your desk on a hot day? It sounds like that amount of air is moving, which is good for the laptop, but it's pretty loud. If you're gaming and you're using a AAA title that really is pretty demanding, say Battlefield 5 or Far Cry 5, you probably might even consider wearing headphones, which is too bad because to me one of the joys of a desktop replacement is usually it's not quite so loud, so you might not need the headphones, but welcome to the world of very high performance PCs these days. The display on this is quite pleasant. It's nice. It's an IPS display, so very good viewing angles, good response times. It's 144 Hz, which is a good thing because you can really push some high frame rates with this. If you're playing something like Apex Legends, you'll have no problem maxing it out at times to 144 Hz on the highest possible settings. This is G-Sync all the time. So that means, G-Sync I worry about less with these fast displays these days, but you won't see any visual tearing, all of that sort of thing. Again, Full HD is your only option. It's matte and non-touch like most gaming laptops. I would love to see a higher resolution display. I'm just going to keep saying that because maybe they're watching and listening and maybe they will do that in the future. It probably has more to do with how many fast refresh displays are available in the 17-inch size more than anything else. I bet they would have liked to have given you a 2K display option. The keyboard on this, very nice. Good tactile feel right up there with MSI SteelSeries. It feels crisp when you push down the keys, but not too stiff. This is not a mechanical keyboard or anything like that, which, given the price, I almost wouldn't be surprised if they had done that. But it is per key RGB backlighting, so you can make your own little personal light show and set it up just however you like, which is nice. I will say that this is not unchanged from the previous generation, but I do like this soft touch keyboard deck, which actually surprisingly doesn't show fingerprints all that much. And I like the dedicated row up here for quick access to the volume, turning off your microphone, ever important when you're playing online games with other folks, right? Quick access to Aura, your RGB keyboard lighting settings, the ASUS Settings Center right over here for control panels, your game recording right here if you want to do screen recording using Windows. It's all nice stuff to have. The trackpad is good. It's a Microsoft Precision trackpad. One thing I do like about the trackpad is it has dedicated buttons. I still always prefer those, and they're pretty soft touch buttons. They might be a little too soft for some folks. It's funny, MSI still goes kind of too stiff. ASUS goes really soft. Maybe somewhere in between would be ideal, but I'll take the softer approach myself. Say hello to my little friends. This comes with your laptop. So, two 280-watt chargers. You could just use one if you're doing productivity work or surfing the web or something like that, but you're going to need both of these if you want maximum performance when gaming or if you're buying this to do 3D development work or lots of 4K video editing. You're going to need the full power of this. So at 560 watts of combined power, clearly your carbon footprint is really not much improved over a desktop, is it? But hey, that's that. The good news is about battery life, though. Usually with desktop replacements, well, you know, nobody intends that they're going to be used away from a power outlet that much. This one has a 96 watt-hour battery. They have increased the battery capacity, so that's pretty huge for a laptop. And it's pretty well isolated, by the way, from the heat-generating components inside, so that's good. It probably won't expand, bulge, get overheated, just because the laptop might run warm internally. So that battery means that, well, we don't have NVIDIA Optimus switchable graphics here, so we're always running on dedicated graphics. But still, this thing can actually go 4 or 5 hours of light use. I'm talking, again, MS Office, streaming some videos, surfing the web, that sort of thing. The minute you're going to start throwing Adobe Premiere in there or Far Cry, not that you're going to play Far Cry Unplugged that much, but you get the idea. The battery life would still be shorter, but for your average gaming desktop replacement laptop, that's pretty impressive. To open up the Easy Access door, which gives you access to the SSDs, 2 of the RAM slots, and their hard drive, there's just one screw. You pry up this little rubber thing right here, unscrew it. ASUS has been doing that for a while. And then you pry off this cover, which will be a slightly traumatic thing. I used a flat blade screwdriver to help get it up because it's in there pretty tenaciously. But this is a very durable piece of plastic, so yes, it's okay if you yank on it. And you yank on it, and this is what you see. So when you're unscrewing all of the screws, these 2 back here go all the way through to the top hinge cover on this side. So this piece over here is going to come off, and you'll see that later because this snaps into the rear section of the chassis, which this is part of the base right here. This is not the coppery part, but the rest of it. Okay, so now we have our easy upgrade door removed, popped off. So here's 2 of the 4 RAM slots right here. If you want to bring this one up to dual channel, by the way, put 1 RAM stick in the lower slot to match what's in the not easily accessible section of the motherboard. Here's our M.2 boot SSD. I have already unscrewed it. Yes, it goes right in there. You'll find out why I unscrewed it in a minute. That's your hard drive bay for 1 2.5-inch hard drive, and here's this place for 2 more M.2 SSD, so you can actually do RAID with this, and they do sell some high-end configurations that have up to 3 SSDs inside. So I have unscrewed this because to take off the complete bottom chassis, say you want to get to this to repaste it or that sort of thing, you have to actually unscrew the SSD because this goes through the casing. This under tray area is, well, part of this cover. Unscrew this, even if there's no drive in there, because these screws go through. Unscrew your M.2 additional bay area here. Again, even if you don't have any SSDs in here, and by the way, here's some nice thermal sticky stuff, so keeps those drives cool if you do happen to put some in later. So then you unscrew all of the screws. They're pretty much mostly visible, including the ones down in these deep holes. So for something like this, a screwdriver like this actually won't work because it gets too fat. You're going to have to use a Phillips head screwdriver that's thin shaft like that for these screws right here. Most of them are the same size. They're fairly large screws. Most of them are actually marked, but some around this area here, 2 of them are a little bit smaller. All right, once you've unscrewed all of those screws, it's not that hard to get off. The clips are not that tenacious. We take it off, we work it around the bottom. It does wrap around the rear fan area, see right over here. So that's where you're going to be prying from. And also you're going to have to take off the top cover of the hinge area too, because it snaps into that back section of the cover. So if we flip this over for a moment, I'll show you what I mean. Here's the top section. Notice I have removed the cover over here that goes over the hinge assembly area. Here it is. Now Alienware does something actually kind of similar like that, so it snaps back on. Don't worry. Okay, back inside. Here is our battery, which is astoundingly large capacity given the fact that it's a relatively small, well, physical battery. So it's 96 watt hours. Well, nice. So here's 2 of our drivers are exposed, our downfiring woofers right here. Here's those 2 RAM slots, more visible now since we took off that access door. And right here you've got 2 large fans, which is good, and they're exhausting out the sides and out the rear, which is pretty common for desktop replacement style laptops. And here's our CPU and GPU heat sinks covering extra stuff here, our VRMs. This is good to see. Now they did change the design a little bit, and this could possibly explain why the CPU is actually running kind of hot on this machine. So it used to be in the older design, and you can see a picture, this had 3 pipes dedicated just to the CPU. So now it doesn't get as many dedicated just to the CPU. We just have these 2 over here. The rest are sharing heat pipes with our GPU. So you get a little more cross heat pollution. There's our Wi-Fi card right there. So you might be asking yourself, why would I buy this and not something like the Alienware Area 51M, which is available even with a desktop CPU, or the Origin PC with a desktop CPU. And those are certainly, in terms of the weight and the price, really good options as well. But given the fact that this one has a pretty large battery, it still has the mobile Core i9 inside, it is a bit more portable in terms of the fact that you can use it away from the outlet for longer. And if you think that this thing runs hot, wait till we look at those desktop CPU models too with an RTX card inside. So that's the ASUS Republic of Gamers, aka ROG G703GX. Certainly one of the most powerful gaming laptops on the market with the price to match. So the pluses are clearly very good performance on this. Lots of upgradable parts. You can hold up to 3 M.2 SSDs in here, a hard drive, 4 RAM slots, nothing to sneeze at. Of course, your CPU rather than your GPU are not upgradable like most typical laptops. The downside is, despite the weight, which will really give you some biceps, and the size and all that sort of thing, I was really surprised that CPU temperatures weren't better on this, and you will hear the fans, and they are large fans, like I'm talking desk fan. Wow. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.